It was a tale of two halves at Arrowhead Stadium in Kansas City on Monday Night Football as the Washington Commanders were very competitive in the first half. 7-7 score at halftime. Commanders moving the ball well. Very competitive on defense as well. Flying around. They looked ready to play today. But then in the second half, Andy Reid and maybe the best team in football in the Kansas City Chiefs showed up. And that Commanders defense that hasn't been able to stop a nosebleed over the last several weeks certainly showed up in the second half tonight. Welcome into the Commanders Report Week 8 post-game show. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button for me if you haven't already. I really do appreciate all of your guys' support. We had an awesome watch party tonight. Lots of people tuned in. Lots of super chats, all that great stuff. It was a really great time, even though that second half wasn't too much fun. So make sure you click that subscribe button if you haven't already. We go live for every single Commanders game, and next week's going to be a big one on Sunday Night Football. You're not going to want to miss it. Click that subscribe button for all of our Commanders content all throughout the 2025 season. All right, man. So big loss here. Couple big injuries to discuss. Laremy Tunsil left this game with a hamstring issue. He tried coming back. He just didn't look right, and they shut him down. Hopefully he'll be able to come back here soon, but I'd be guessing that we're going to see more of Brandon Coleman at left tackle in the near future and see if we have anything in Brandon Coleman here over the next couple weeks while Tunsil gets back from that hamstring issue. Then Javon Kinlaw left the game with a shoulder injury. It looked like they were taping up his bicep. He remained on the sideline, though, so that tells me that this might not be like super duper serious, but we'll have an update for you guys tomorrow when Dan Quinn gives us some more answers on that. But then probably the most concerning here, Terry McLaurin with a quad injury, left this game in the fourth quarter. Now, maybe they're just being abundantly cautious with him because he just got back from a quad injury, right? And that's exactly what the designation was in this game. Terry made some really nice plays in this game, man. Had an incredible catch down the sideline, caught a touchdown. So it was nice to see him back in the lineup. But, now you have to worry about, is he out of the lineup yet again, heading into a really critical week against the Seattle Seahawks next week at home. But, the total team stats today, obviously they speak for themselves. In the first half, the Commanders, actually dominated time of possession. I think they had 5 more minutes time of possession than Kansas City, and then the Chiefs just completely flipped the script in the second half. Long touchdown drive after long touchdown drive. It's very clear the Commanders ran out of gas, especially because the offense couldn't stay on the field. Some very big mistakes. Jalen Lane had a drop, all these different things. But just at the end of the day, man, like it was a tale of two halves. You were very competitive in the first half. Defense collapsed the entire team collapsed in the second half, and that's all she wrote. You got to play 4 quarters of good football to be able to beat the Chiefs on the road, and the Commanders didn't do that tonight. So we'll get to our takeaways here, and we'll start with I appreciate the approach, okay? I appreciate Dan Quinn in particular, the head coach, getting these guys ready to play, all right? This was a game that nobody gave the Commanders a chance in, probably for good reason. But they came out with their hair on fire. Jeremy Reeves made a number of big tackles early on. That defense was flying around, making plays. They forced 2 turnovers. And then you got, the offense was really moving the ball well. Cliff Kingsbury, I think, had a really good script for those first few drives. Marcus Mariota was doing a really good job executing the offense. There were some bad breaks there with Deebo Samuel dropping a pass on the first drive leading to an interception that, it proved to be pretty big there in that first half. Missed out on some fourth down opportunities. But you know what? I appreciate that they went into this game saying, you know what? We're going to take the fight to them, and we understand that we got to score points in this ballgame if we want to win. We're going to go for this, all right? We're going to go and try and win this football game instead of trying not to lose it. And I appreciated that approach that the Commanders coaching staff brought to the table today, and that's the kind of mentality I want from my coaching staff. I want them to be aggressive. I want them to go out and try and win ball games. And if the players can't execute and they can't get the job done, I'm willing to live with the results of that. I am, okay? Especially when you don't have your kicker. Matthew Wright was your kicker today, and some of those kicks would have been pretty long. So at the end of the day, I'm pretty okay with the way the Commanders coaching staff approached this game, but frankly, they got out-coached in the second half. In this ball game, Andy Reid made some very good adjustments in that second half coming out of the locker room, and the Commanders had no answer for him. But then I do want to give some appreciation and some love to Marcus Mariota, even though obviously second half didn't go in the Commanders' favor on offense. That first half, he was pretty darn good. He was outplaying Patrick Mahomes in that first half. by quite a margin. And, he had a really tough ask. He had to go up against a really tough Spagnuolo defense this week, and I thought for the most part he held up. And, in that second half he had to throw the ball a lot more, all that different stuff. I thought he used his legs effectively today. I thought he threw some nice touch. He did some nice out-of-structure playmaking stuff today. Marcus Mariota was not necessarily the reason why you lost this football game, in my opinion. And if he has to play next week versus Seattle, as long as the defense holds up, which is a huge if, we're going to talk about that here in just a second, Mariota, I think, can give you a chance to win, especially if the defense holds up and Terry can play next week. But speaking of Terry, it was good to have him back. Now, hopefully he can continue to be back, and hopefully they were just being precautionary, leaving him out there in the fourth quarter. But he had a touchdown today. He had 54 yards. He had an incredible catch down the sideline in the second half. That was a $30 million per season type of catch. But, I think you expect a little bit more than 3 catches and 54 yards out of a guy making that kind of money. And at the end of the day, man, I'm hoping that this is just the beginning of, him getting ramped up, where eventually we're going to get to a point where Terry's playing like Terry McLaurin. So good to see him back today. Hopefully he can continue, a positive trend upwards in the weeks to come. And then we get Jalen Lane, rookie out of Virginia Tech, and we've been talking about him, and his drop issues and his hands issues throughout the season. He's muffed some punts. Today he muffed a kickoff return. He had a big drop on a third down that was beautifully placed by Marcus Mariota that killed a drive. I don't know if you can put Jalen Lane out there and really trust him to come down with the football. He's got a pretty big drop issue at this point, guys. And, honestly, I trust Luke McCaffrey out there as a number 3 receiver way more than I trust Jalen Lane, which I hate to say because I love Lane coming out. I love his speed. I love his yak ability. I even like some of his route running. He runs some nasty double moves, but you got to catch the football. And he's had a really tough time doing that, and it's cost this team more than once. So what say you guys? We're halfway through our takeaways here on this post-game show. Give me an A, B, C, D, or F for today's Commanders' performance. Obviously second half was probably an F. First half, I'd say probably a B. So I'd probably say a D+. It's probably what's about right for me. Not a good performance whatsoever. Only score 7 points. Pretty embarrassing performance in that second half for sure. So make sure you guys answer this pinned question down there in the comment section while I talk about today's sponsor, which is Prize Picks. And the hard-hitting football action is even better with Prize Picks this football season. The weather might be changing, but the feeling of being right never gets old. So keep the season rolling on Prize Picks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. Prize Picks is simple to play. You just pick more than or less than on at least 2 player stat projections. And if you get your picks right, you could cash in. On Prize Picks, how you play is up to you. If you want flexibility, choose Flex Play, where you can get paid even if one of your picks misses. And if you want the biggest payouts, go for the Power Play. No matter how you play, though, Prize Picks is a great way to put your takes to the test. And if you know ball, you can be walking away with some cold, hard cash. Join millions of users and sign up for America's #1 fantasy sports app today. And today, Ponzi and I made some money with today's game. In our lineup, we took the more on receiving yards for Luke McCaffrey. Had a couple nice catches and some nice plays in the first half, then didn't see the ball again on offense the rest of the game. Seems like a little bit of a mistake there. But then you got the more on passing yards for Patrick Mahomes and the more on receiving yards for Terry McLaurin. We hit on all 3 of those. We did a power play. So Ponzi and I walking away with a little money with our friends at Prize Picks this evening. But if you guys want to get a Prize Picks lineup in for this upcoming Thursday night football matchup here in a couple days, or professional football and college football over this next weekend as we approach week 9. You guys can download the Prize Picks app today and use code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. I thought the defense was better today, guys. Certainly in the first half, they were flying around. They were making good tackles. That Jordan McGee was a big upgrade at off-ball linebacker. I thought that the move to put Frankie Louvu at defensive end was a good one for this football team. And Marshawn Lattimore played a lot better today. Trey Amos, once again, had a really good game. And I just thought that, for the most part, it was a pretty decent, performance for especially the first half. Second half, the wheels kind of fell off. And honestly, I don't put this one as much on the pass coverage aspect of things. All right, today you held the #1 fastest quarterback average time to throw guy in Patrick Mahomes. And I think his average heading into tonight was 2.53 seconds average time to throw. And you made him hold on to the ball past his first read pretty consistently. That tells you that the coverage was holding up. The issue was the pass rush didn't get home nearly enough. And when it did, like, you only rushed with really 4. And Mahomes, with his elite pocket presence and his playmaking ability, was able to sidestep pressure, step up in the pocket, escape the pocket, do all these different things. And then when, he's outside the pocket, he's one of the best to ever do it. So almost 300 yards passing today. He did have 2 picks, but he had 3 touchdowns in the second half. Absolute dominant performance to seal this one in the second half. And sometimes you got to tip your cap. Obviously, the Commanders' defense got to play better, but I do think it was better today than what we've seen in recent weeks on that side of the ball. But like I said, guys, second half collapse. And that's not just on defense, guys. That's on offense as well. Offense couldn't stay on the field, and Jalen Lane's drop and all these different things. Couldn't run the football in the second half. But on defense as well, couldn't stop the run. All right, against a team that doesn't really run the football all that well. Couldn't get them off the field on third down. All right, they had multiple methodical drives in the second half. And when that happens, your defense is going to get tired, and things are going to break. And things certainly broke in this game, which is why I certainly want to see more changes made by the Washington Commanders in the weeks to come. Now, how many more changes can you make? Well, you can maybe think about sitting Quan Martin. It was another kind of rough game for him. You can think about sitting Bobby Wagner, and I understand this team doesn't want to do it. He's a team captain and a very intelligent player, all that stuff, great communicator, but, he still remains a physical liability out there, and there's a number of times today where he got beat, and I think he gave up multiple touchdowns in coverage today, once again. And he was the liability. Andy Reid was able to exploit that because, like most good offensive play callers, they find ways to exploit Bobby Wagner and his lack of speed and his lack of change of direction ability at this point in his career. So I still think more changes are needed on this Commanders defense, and I'm hoping that they can make those changes in the weeks to come. Because they're certainly needed, in my opinion. But then, looking forward to next week, it's a big game next week, man, because if you can win next week before the trade deadline, all right, and you're sitting at 4-5, and you're coming off a win at home on Sunday night primetime versus a legitimately good team in the Seattle Seahawks. Maybe Jaden Daniels comes back and balls out, and the defense, you finally bench Bobby Wagner, and that's the move that gets this defense to really play to their full potential. I don't know. All right, but if you go out and you win next week, you're probably not selling before the deadline. But if you lose next week, there's certainly a possibility where someone offers you like a 3rd-round pick for Daron Payne, you're trading him away. If someone's offering you a 5th-round pick and you get your return on investment on Deebo Samuel, you're probably taking that. If Zach Ertz, if you can get rid of him for a 7th-round pick, you're probably taking that. Andrew Wiley for the same thing. There might be players on this team that other teams covet via trade, and with the lack of talent, well, the lack of draft capital that you have next year in the early rounds in particular, you don't have a 2nd or a 4th-round pick. The more draft picks that you have, especially with the higher round picks, the better if you're the Washington Commanders. So, next week's going to be a big one for sure. I would say the season is pretty much officially over if you lose next week, if it's not already over at this point. So point the finger for me down there in the comments section. Who's the most to blame for the loss today? I don't know. It's tough for me to point to just one person because I thought Dan Quinn got these guys ready to play heading into the game. But then, if I have to blame one person, I know, it's not just one person, but I'm going to go with Bobby Wagner just because, I still think he's the biggest issue with this defense. And, I don't know. Like, if he was the catalyst for every single big mistake in this game, he had an interception today that was pretty much gifted to him. But I digress. Until you get Bobby Wagner off the field consistently, he's going to continue to be exploited. All right, so some final thoughts here. Obviously, another disappointing performance, another blowout loss for this Commanders team is now you're 2 games under 500, 3 straight losses. It's tough to kind of talk about, this football team that we had such high hopes for. I mean, I remember I predicted 12 wins, 11 wins, my preseason prediction, and I had Commanders fans on this channel saying I didn't have enough wins in my record prediction for this team. And I think that, they've already gotten to the point where they've lost as many games as maybe we expected them to lose the entire season. They've already lost as many games as they lost the entirety of the 2024 season. And I think, it's certainly time to face facts that this is not the same Commanders team. It was a really special season last year, but with injuries and all this different stuff and a terrible defense and, regression from multiple Commanders defensive players this year, it's not the same Commanders team. And unless they have a major turnaround in the weeks to come, this season is effectively over. Now, I do want to thank our MVP on today's watch party. That would be Shaggy. He donated over $300 on tonight's Commanders Report watch party. So big shout out to the MVP. I told him that if he put in an extra 50, I would give him a shout out on the post-game show. So today's post-game show has been presented by Shaggy. Big shout out to him. A big-time fan of the show, so we appreciate your support there, Shaggy. That'll be it for today's edition, though, of the Commanders Report post-game show here for Week 8. Make sure you guys click that subscribe button tomorrow. Overreaction Tuesday, where we're going to be breaking down the latest injury updates. We'll be breaking down what needs to happen with this Washington Commanders team moving forward, and really do appreciate all of you guys watching tonight. I know it's getting late, so I appreciate your guys' time. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Until then, guys, out to the Commanders.